Hi, everyone. If I could just get your attention real quick, please. Our student body president, Sadie Williams, would like to lead us into an icebreaker before we call our meeting to order. So if you could just give her some of your attention here while you grab pizza.
Okay, so as I'm sure you all know, not all of you know each other super, super well. And so we're just gonna start taking a couple minutes at the beginning of every single meeting just to like talk and like meet new people and things because that's a part of this space that I don't think is utilized very often. And so the purpose of today is basically just to think about Student Senate in a way that you all may not be accustomed to considering it. And so I need all of you like two to be in like groups of four and you can choose them, but you need to have two people from like this side right here and then two people from the other. So just do that really, really quickly. You have like 30 seconds. That really small on campus, like literally like adding a bench or we're adding a light on the campus. And then like think of that, and then we're gonna go on the stage. It's kind of like seeing it filling in. It's like all right. I still see some people sitting down who haven't moved yet. So if you haven't moved, then go to the other side. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Attention again, really quick. I'm going to give you instructions. So you're all going to have 2 minutes. Think about your academic unit that you're in, whether that's liberal arts and sciences, engineering, architecture, whatever that may be. Think about all the student organizations you're involved in and all other aspects of where your identity intersects with KU. And think of a small need that exists on campus. And then you and your group needs to decide on one, and you'll just kind of like say it whenever we call on you here in a second. And so, like, an example is like adding a little like stand-up desks and like stationary bikes or like a little treadmill into Anschutz. So students who like need to be like moving while they're studying or just need a study break can like do something. So like just like think of like a small thing like that. Like nothing like groundbreaking would take 8 years to do or even a year. Something that could be accomplished in a couple months or a week. I'm excited.
and I'd like a presentation along with our officer report today.
Sounds good. Can I use your mic?
Feel free.
For the thingy? Work on this. All right, everyone, if you can focus back up here, I moved to the left. So we're gonna start up here in the front, and then we're gonna work our way back. And each of you has 5 seconds to say your idea. Not because it's not important, but just to keep it concise. And so we're just gonna start here and just go group to group. And just talk loudly.
Sure. We were discussing maybe some more discrete career advising would be helpful, kind of having more, pre-med, individual departments, for instance.
Sick.
Can you repeat that?
Here, throw the box.
Yeah.
The box. Let's throw the box right
Mm-hmm.
Hello, everybody. We were talking about maybe having some more dedicated career advising for different career paths. For instance, a pre-med specific department, a pre-law specific department, or something like that. Instead of having kind of departmental advisors within advising, branch that out and make it more detailed and in depth.
Thank you.
Sure.
I think we should make student housing more affordable because there are a lot of low income students who cannot find housing at this university because it's too expensive.
All right, you go back to your hijack.
We talked about just trying to make transportation a little bit better and easier for everybody because it's been kind of running late and difficult lately.
Marcel?
Oh, thank you. So, oh, wow. Hello. We think that adding a pedestrian crossing in 11th Street with Missouri, where actual people have to cross to go by foot to the education building, would be definitely something easy to do and could contribute to safety of campus. Thank you very much.
We talked about distributing free period products in all buildings at KU.
We talked about trying to increase access to career specific programs like maybe Photoshop and Illustrator.
We talked about adding accessible crosswalks on campus for people with disabilities.
We talked about better parking and better parking for students, so less tickets and tows happen. And especially for visitors too.
We talked about the fact that we have nowhere for people to rest by bus stops, and I'm a disabled student, and for disabled students in general, having nowhere to be able to sit down or rest when you're having to wait for a bus, and there aren't a lot of spaces on campus for disabled people to take a rest when they're trying to get across campus. I think that's really important. Oh, sorry, babe.
Quick. Just quick idea. I have idea for all the senators here to give them a free parking as a thank you for their service and their time. I like that.
So Turner brought up the amazing point of having a spring event, whether it's a huge concert in the spring is a recruitment event, but having sort of a revival from the winter and bringing some big artists as a huge sort of get together for students. No, it was TCU. So TCU brings in Kesha and Flo Rida, and it's not 2009. We can do better than that. Yeah.
Is your group up here? The research group. Oh, sorry, I'm not a part of this group. I'm not part of. We weren't in a group. We came in late. You should put them on the spot. I was looking. Oh, you want it?
Next week. Yeah, we have control of the union. You want to have an idea?
Well, the parking, it's like right by the end. No one parks there past 5.
Hey guys, we focus.
No, that was an idea someone else said. I was just
Oh, no, you're.
commenting on it. I want to say it was,
You can just say it really quick.
I want to say it was Zap.
Just say it. It just gave credit.
I don't know who it was though. I just vaguely know who it was.
Another idea from someone that was passed along that's been visited before is having free parking in the Union Garage past 5. Right? All right, we're going this side. Isn't there some like over here still? Thank you. We did the middle, but not the right side.
So yeah, our group just talked about, I guess, better spaces for those in minority communities, just so that everybody could feel comfortable on campus. Just as like, again, being at a PWI, not every space feels comfortable for every minority.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did everyone over there hear that?
So yeah, better spaces for minority students because not every space on a PWI campus feels comfortable to everybody. And so just spaces so that students like minorities can thrive on campus.
And then, did you all?
Similarly, more support for Indigenous students, but honestly, being at a PWI is weird. Who wants this?
Is there anyone else? Any other groups? Okay, I'm gonna set this over here.
A better pathway or link between Haskell, KU, and the KU Law School, because there's maybe 4 Indigenous law students out of, I don't know, 250 law students, which is exceedingly low, especially given that Haskell is a very important place to many tribes and communities, as well as Lawrence.
Very fair. All right, so the purpose of this icebreaker is one, for you all to get to meet some new people and things. But I think that often whenever people think about their role in student senate, whether you're coming and watching, whether you're an elected senator or even the press, I think people see us as just a voting body where we just vote on funding bills or vote on resolutions. And those things are important. But at the same time, everyone who enters these chambers on a Wednesday night has a unique opportunity to affect change in this campus. And that's a privilege that we really need to yield responsibly and with a lot of diligence. So unlike a lot of students who come through KU every single day and they see something that they want to change and they don't know how to change it, you all have the privilege of coming here and of knowing people and having the ear of administrators and other important people on campus and really being able to enact the change that you see. And so all of these ideas that you said here today, I didn't hear a single thing that isn't doable on this campus. You all have a lot of agency, a lot of privilege and a lot of power to be here, some more than others. And so really take advantage of that, we are here as students, we see that problems on our campus and no one's going to fix them if you're not going to. And so this is a place where we can be collaborative, where we can share ideas, where we can support each other. And I really want all of us to take advantage of that throughout this year. So if you ever have any ideas, or if you're in the next couple of weeks, couple of months, you're walking on campus and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so irritating. I really wish I had this. Then bring it to this space. This is a place where we can workshop ideas, we can support each other and everything like that. And so that's kind of why I wanted to start off with that exercise today. Because there really isn't a problem, big or small, on our campus that isn't worth addressing. And I hope that you all feel that way too, that there's equal support and opportunity for change in this space. And so anyone on exec is welcome and or is very willing to help in any way that we can. And if we don't know who to connect you to affect the change that you want to see, then we at least know someone who we will know who to talk to. So we can help in any way that we can. And sometimes that just means finding community to kind of just talk about the things that we wish we could change immediately that are going to take a longer time, but that's still a valuable interaction. So with that, I would like to welcome our speaker for today, Sarah Waters, to talk about the housing rates proposal. And I think Alessia had something too, but I'm going to pass it off to the people who actually run the meeting. But thank you for bearing with me through that.
Thank you, Sadie. Don't know why that's been up. Yes? A motion? Well, we haven't called to order yet. Even. Yeah. All right, I'll go ahead and call this meeting into order. Holly, what was your motion?
the agenda and have housing and finance speak afterwards, because we have a lot of people here that have made time out of their day that don't necessarily feel comfortable in this space or in this building due to failings of our institution. And so I feel like we should support them and listen to them first and not be putting something else that we could push to later ahead of them.
I second that motion.
Right, that motion's been properly moved and seconded. Do we have any objections in the chamber? No, we have not. All right. Yeah, that would be considered. Is that an objection? Or,
I can change it to approve the minutes first, then you.
okay, so move towards between approval of the minutes and then our guest speaker. Is that what I'm? Oh, no, that's what I'm saying, like in between approve the minutes and guest speaker. Okay. All right. All right, we have a second. Any objections to the motion now as it stands? All right, seeing none, that motion passes. So before we go ahead and get into speaking tonight, I know there's a lot of individuals in this room who usually aren't in Alderson on Wednesday nights. So I want to go ahead and give like a little tutorial, like how we generally like will interact in this space. So when we do have legislation come up, the presenters will come up to this podium up here and they'll present the legislation. After they're finished presenting the legislation, we will then have a question period. And across the room, you can see a variety of different microphones that you can utilize during the question period. This is to make sure that folks online can hear us and that our stream is able to like catch audio historically. And so you'll see them here. There's a catch box right there and then a catch box up here. A reminder that those are always on. And so if you don't want anything like you're saying to be caught by the box, I would probably just put it like away from you, generally speaking. And then if you have a handheld mic, Holly, do you have that handheld mic next to you? Ah, perfect. That's what they look like. You'll have to turn those on and off as you go. But just, yeah, be aware that there is a button on the bottom of those microphones when you are wanting to speak. And then finally, before we get into this legislation, I just want to address something that happened in this chamber last week. Legislation was considered that night, and at our last meeting, we were reminded about how problematic and disrespectful it can be to attack someone personally while they're presenting legislation to this body. As president of this assembly, I want to establish that this space will review legislation fairly and practice mutual respect for our fellow members, as is stated in the Student Senate Code of Ethics. I'll try to ensure that this meeting stays respectful tonight and know that if you ever feel that someone is crossing the line, please feel free to call decorum and ask for it to be addressed by the chair, me sitting here. That's just something I wanted to put in ahead of the meeting here because we need to learn decorum as a body to make sure that we are like respecting people and the ideas that they're bringing to this chamber and not using like the question period or speeches to attack individuals who are coming here and presenting ideas to the assembly. All right, so with that in mind, I believe it's resolution now 302. Am I correct, Holly? Oh, approval of the minutes, correct. All right, do I see a motion to approve the minutes? Motion from Abdullah. Do I see a second? I see a second from Trey. All right. Any objections to moving towards a vote on the minutes? All right, seeing none, we will now commence a vote on the minutes. Nathaniel, if you can go ahead and get the poll sent. All right, and you should see that in the Students Assembly chat. If you are a voting member of the Students Assembly, please vote to approve the minutes. Yes, if you do approve of them. No, if you do not, and abstain to stay out of the discussion. And a reminder today that our quorum is 26 members. Oh, and while that vote's running, Holly, just to clarify for your motion, it was 302 and 303 as the order, correct? Yes, perfect. All right, thank you. All right, I'm still seeing votes rolling in, so I'm gonna go ahead and give another 30 seconds on the poll, but then we'll look to close it out.
Hello. Oh, Will Doy reads, or sorry if I mispronounced that, but are you here? Oh, okay. You? Sounds good. Okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
Can you come to the front, Will? Thank you. Sorry.
All right, is there anyone who has voting rights that has not exercised them yet? All right, seeing none, I will go ahead and move to close this poll. And with a vote of, I get some quiet in the chamber so we can hear the results. With a vote of 35 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 1 abstention, this motion clearly passes. All right, and with that, we will now move on to resolution 2023-2, 302, and that is the resolution regarding Indigenous students here. All right, so do we have the presenters for that legislation? Oh, Holly? Generally 5 minutes. All right, is everyone in approval of like having 10 minutes of speaker time to start with? I see a second from Austin. I don't see any objections. Oh. 15 minutes. How much time do you need?
15.
15?
15, we're
All right.
hoping.
I can just as chair say 15, and as long as no one objects, we should be good. All right, and were you able to find the legislation there? It should be one of these. All right, is that good for you?
Han Manakiapi, Alicia Swimmer, Machiapi Ksho, Imatahan, Mini Luzahan, Malakota, enrolled in the Rosebud tribe. I am a 2022 graduate of Haskell Indian Nations University, where I received my degree in business administration with an emphasis in management. I am a first-year master's student in the Indigenous Studies program. I will use my degree to further my career into policymaking to help protect all Indigenous life.
Buenas noches, me llamo Yamina. Salam alaikum wa samni Yamina. My name is Yamina, and I am a second-year Indigenous Studies student here at KU. I did my undergrad in criminal justice and political science, and I plan to move forward with my academic career, supporting Indigenous peoples within communities, tribes, and federal government.
Yat Kelly Beam Yanisha, Tachinishle, Bilagana Bashachi, Forchini Dashache, Bilagana Dashanale, Akotego Donates Anishle. My name is Kelly Beam, and I'm Red Running into Water Clan from the Navajo Nation. I'm a first-year graduate student in the geography program, pursuing a certificate in Indigenous Studies.
Hosea, Duckwo, Da'a, Hiha, Molly Adams, Titalegi. I just graduated from Haskell with Indigenous and American Indian Studies, and now I'm in the Indigenous Studies program here at KU.
Bonjour, donc me bishan Dejnika Sepe, Matthew Dejnikash Chimok Moenan, Balwadami and Dow. Hello, I am Quiet Rain, Matthew in English. I'm Potawatomi, and I am a first-year PhD student here in the history department.
Kamisaraki Hilatanaka Kuyakanaka, Imanayaka Kashanki, Nayaikuna Taraikuna, Tapua, Sansak, Yorana Korua, Marimari Pulamian, Punta Samuta, Yetekta Shukedlat Solayep, Wekeseyer Maxes. I greet you in 9 indigenous languages from the territory that is now Chile, where I come from, which represents only a fraction of the over 800 languages of the indigenous peoples and nations of South America. Mi nombre es Marcela Paiva Vélez, mestiza y orgullosa de mis raíces indígenas. I'm a student at the MA in Indigenous Studies and an ISA member. Thank you for receiving us.
Oh, Mitakiapi. Damakota Badewa Kantawa Himacha. Isanti Makoche Himata. Tatuye Duza Mishmie Do. Shunka Sapa Tioshpa Ki Himata. Inamitra Ki Chiapi. Hello, my name is Steve Larby Jr. I come from the land of the Isanti, the people, the village of the knife. First year master's student in the Indigenous Studies program. Thank you.
The committee said the university, they should provide special recruitment programs for Indigenous college students, financial aid for Indigenous students, social counseling and tutoring for Indigenous students, an Indian cultural media and meeting center, special tutor council liaisons to live in the same housing units with the Indian students, travel funds for Indians to attend conferences, free transportation to and from the campus, and free tuition and fees for Indians. These words appeared in the Friday, April 6th, University Daily Kansan newspaper in 1973. At the time, these programs were proposed by the Committee of Indian Affairs. Two Committee of Indian Affairs members, Tom Beaver and Ona Mikicheteno, met with Chancellor Raymond Nicholas. The Chancellor said of the meeting, quote, "We had a pleasant, friendly conversation about generalities." When Eric Meyer, the Daily Kansan staff writer, asked Tom Beaver about what he thought the administration would do, Beaver said, quote, "I think the university administration will just read the proposal and throw the damn thing away." 49 years of pleasant conversation, 49 years of First Nation students and the broader Indigenous community on KU's campus asking for the same things in this resolution. Beaver's words are prophetic, or at least rather they would be. As it seems, Indigenous students have regressed in importance since 1973. We have yet to meet the Chancellor. History is repeating itself almost a half century later, and who among us gathered here today in good conscience would let the university continue to ignore Indigenous students' needs for another half century? The long history of Turtle Island, to you, North America, First Nation people, is a very long one, and I will be brief and as succinct as I can, but I must also humbly ask forgiveness for all that which I leave out, as I am constrained by the time. Since Columbus was discovered at sea by the Taino people in what is currently called the Bahamas, the genocidal assault upon Turtle Island's original inhabitants began. Columbus wrote in his diary, "With 50 men, they can all be subjugated," in reference to Taino people, and made to do what is required of them. This set the tone for the next 6 centuries. Rarely were we seen as equals. With the Europeans came not only violence, but disease to which we had no immunity. The spread weakened the First Nations communities and made them prey for ambitious settler colonialists. And as more Europeans arrived, more and more First Nations people died, were subjugated and removed from their ancestral homelands. Yet the settler colonialists were not satisfied. To them, First Nations people, who they erroneously called Indians, were still a problem to them. First Nations children were taken from their home by force or coercion, taken far away, their hair cut, forbidden to speak their language, learn their stories, practice their culture. We do not know how many children died. in the boarding schools, which were in operation for more than 1 century in both the United States and Canada. Those that survived endured unimaginable traumas. Cultural and institutional genocide are still genocide. Land rights, clean water, drinking water, and basic human rights are things we must fight for every day. And even when our relatives walk on, they cannot seem to find peace. The dehumanization continues. Our ancestors are dug up, sold, put on display in institutions of learning, or stashed like objects in boxes, stored in the same building as their descendants. Why? History is repeating itself. Almost a half-century later, since the Committee on Indian Affairs at KU submitted its proposal, now here stands the Indigenous Students Association asking for the same things asked for 49 years ago. And I ask again, who among us gathered here today in good conscience could let this go on, could let the university ignore Indigenous students for another half-century? And for all of us, this is a collective moment in history to make things right. It is up to all of us to decide how the history of this moment will be written. And while history repeats, it never does sing the same tune. The present reality here at KU is it's no longer a First Nations Indigenous student. It no longer affects First Nation student. It affects all Indigenous peoples at KU. And the journey of healing is one that must include all Indigenous students at KU. And this is something I am not able to speak on or speak about. I will therefore turn over the podium to my friend and colleague, Yamina Safiat.
Thank you. Human rights work in every corner of the world starts with a precedent, a positive precedent of change. Together, we are bringing about change toward a common goal to improve the lives of Indigenous peoples and defend and support the rights of all people. This resolution is a blueprint in which to build upon and only enrich. This is a human rights issue. Death is not exclusive to Indigenous people. Death exists in all our lives, and how we deal with it must be acknowledged. Less access to education is not only a symptom of colonization with Native communities here, but a systematically occurring within Indigenous communities across the globe. Access to education and the ability to feel safe on campus is also a human rights issue. This is also not just a Kansas issue or a North American issue. We cannot ignore that KU holds remains and items from other Indigenous communities in Australia and South America, among other places. To make this a more equitable space, we have to acknowledge that all groups have different needs, and accommodating these needs allows us to have more inclusive environment to grow and to create. We may set a precedence for other groups to ask for similar accommodations. To that, I will say, I fully support that, and the rights of others to do the same. We want to heal together and to work together. I would like to turn the podium to Alicia Swimmer.
When we're talking about the reparations of our ancestors, I would like to just mention that all of our cultures are different. As Native people, there are 574 federally recognized tribes. That doesn't include the tribes fighting for recognition, the tribes terminated, or the tribes that were slaughtered upon the arrival of the European people. So we have to remember that we don't know the ages of these graves, where they were taken from, why they were taken. And most of them are culturally unidentifiable because of the grave robbing aspect of why they're here on campus. So it just continues on with the dehumanization. Like, we're not only dehumanized by having to be here right now, because this is our second appearance of this resolution, but we're dehumanized in death. So I just like to make that clear that we're not a monolithic group. I can't speak for 574 tribes, and they can't speak for me. Steve?
Hello again, my relatives. It's good to see you, and there's food, so that's always good, you know. But again, yeah, okay, you know, we thank you for inviting us again to your space, to your lodge of all these great minds in here, you know. And yeah, again, you know, we're concerned with memory. You know, memory is very important to us. For it is, memory is all that we have, you know. We are remembered by the way that we live with each other, by the way that we live in life, you know. And when we reach that, the transition, the change, you know, we go on a journey, and what is left here is left to nourish, to re-cleanse, to purify. But when that is disturbed, memory is disturbed. And so again, you know, we thank you again for just giving us the time to speak and to be with you all. And again, relationality, you know, make relatives with each other, get to know each other. This is the way it should be, right? So we, the people, it is we, us. We live under that, right? That's what we're taught. So let's live it. Let's make it active. And let's find ways to complement each other. Look at the strengths that we can all bring together to make the land that we share now a beautiful place, in honoring all of our loved ones who rest here now, because they all do. Again, you know, many of your mothers and fathers, they fought in wars, you know. And what happened in those wars, it was difficult. You know, they went through hell. So some of them, they lived like that the rest of their life, only awaiting a time of peace. And so they reached that, and now they rest. And so we have the same concern for our ancestors, that they too deserve peace. And unfortunately, the university that we're all a part of and that we contribute to has denied that peace. And so again, it's really just going to take all of us, and we look forward to your support in honoring peace, you know, relationship. You know, I say I'm a Damakota, I'm a Dakota, I'm a Ponca. We are taught to live life as relatives, but we are also taught to stand up for the integrity of our people. And we are also taught to be fearless. And you know, the Dakota are fearless, is what Grandpa would tell us boys. To be fearless and what change can bring. Change is good and bad. But the movement towards that change, by accepting change, will allow each and every one of us to accept a destiny that will be the same as these ancestors and your ancestors. So again, thank you.
All right. Can I get a round of applause for our speakers? Thank you so much. One more minute. Yes. Do I have a time extension? All right. 10 minutes, second. All right. And any objections to extending speakers' time by 10 minutes? Seeing none. All right. Time is extended by 10 minutes.
Thank you, guys.
Hello again, and thank you for extending our time here. I'm going to talk briefly about the Native American Graves and Protection and Repatriation Act, which is the federal requirements that KU follow and abide by during this process. So at the time of NAGPRA's enactment in 1990, museums and federal agencies housed between 100,000 and 200,000 individual remains. That does not include the 110,000 additional unidentifiable remains also housed within these institutions. NAGPRA intended to set a foundation for ethical archaeology while also formally acknowledging tribal sovereignty or tribal self-governance. However, NAGPRA is not without its limitations. In the first 15 years of its enactment, less than 32,000 individual remains were repatriated back to their rightful owners. In addition, NAGPRA does not enforce a time frame for implementing an inventory of these collections. That is one of the reasons why, although we applaud KU for taking the steps to continue the NAGPRA process, this lack of implementation of inventory is why they were never deemed as out of compliance during the last 20 years. In addition, NAGPRA does not cover items that are not considered funerary, culturally patrimonial, or religious in context. And finally, because of a federal circuit judge ruling, NAGPRA's definition of Native American is only related to individuals of a tribe, people, or culture that is or was indigenous, but only within the bounds of the United States. This sets a dangerous precedent that does not extend the rights of respect, consultation, and adherence to law to unidentifiable remains and indigenous remains that are originating from outside the bounds of this nation. On November 16th, we will celebrate the 32nd anniversary of the passing of NAGPRA. And just yesterday, the Department of the Interior released a 55-page proposal outlining regulations to improve NAGPRA, because since 1990, since its enactment, it has not been revised. This action by the Interior further supports our belief that although NAGPRA establishes a vital foundation for repatriation, the Act has visible shortcomings that require more accountability. As such, we kindly ask this assembly to support our request to hold KU to a standard that is not bound by the minimal adherence to a federal law, by ensuring that all remains and objects are rightfully repatriated and all Indigenous students at KU are given the visibility and equity that they deserve.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kit Perry, and I am a history PhD student from Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm actually speaking on behalf of another ally who cannot be here tonight, Josh Belovko. He is a master's student in the Indigenous Studies program from Edgewood, Maryland, and we are both members of the Indigenous Studies Student Association. The late civil rights giant and former representative John Lewis once said that when you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have to speak up. You have to say something, you have to do something. The allies of the Indigenous students at KU stand in solidarity and support of the necessity of returning ancestors to their rightful place of burial. For the past few weeks, we have learned just how abhorrent the practice of keeping ancestors within the space of the Indigenous Studies program is. These people should have never been removed from their resting place. But ignoring the requirements of federal law and continuing to disrespect Indigenous communities worldwide is especially heinous. We reiterate the voices and views expressed by our Indigenous peers in calling on the university's student government and administration to act in good conscience. The requirements of the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, NAGPRA, must be fulfilled. KU has the chance to be a leader nationwide in growing a relationship with Indigenous people domestically and abroad. Not only could the current Indigenous population of KU feel safe and welcome, but prospective Indigenous undergraduate and graduate students would know that their worldviews and beliefs are respected. As allies, we must be open to learning from Indigenous peoples and not turn our backs on them when they need us most. Rather than hindering the needs of a hurting community, a bright future can become possible through tribal consultation and promoting equity for all. Indigenous students have come forward here today to help guide us in what will begin to right these wrongs. They should not have had to do so. Now the Student Senate has the opportunity to stand behind our Indigenous students, faculty, and staff to pass this resolution to begin to resolve a betrayal of trust
among its Indigenous members and build a stronger, diverse community for all. Responding to this call of action with appropriate resources can inspire generations to follow us. Not only should KU properly apologize for the decades of injustice, they must also expeditiously meet the requests of the Indigenous Studies Student Association. As allies, we should never turn our backs on our Indigenous peers, friends, colleagues, and faculty members. Thank you. That's it.
All right, and with that, we have 3 minutes and 45 seconds for questions. Is that a question back there, Holly? All right, Holly and then Lena. Any other questions in the room before I restart the timer? All right, Holly, you can go ahead and ask your question. Yeah, go ahead and grab that catch box. That would probably be helpful. Do you want me to have Lena ask the first question when we get, oh, perfect.
No,
Never
I
mind.
got it.
Right.
So I just wanted to say thank you to you all for being here. My name's Holly Hall. I'm the graduate student body president here at KU. I really appreciate you all coming. I don't feel like you should have had to do that. To be honest, I don't feel like you should have had to prove why you're deserving of us supporting your resolution. And so with that, I know there is a question on the floor, but I would like to make a motion and for the Student Senate to show that we support our Indigenous communities and make a motion to vote on this resolution. And I hope to God that the vote is unanimously yes, because nobody should have to come up and tell you why they are important when their history has been so ruined by people from my country, people from yours countries. Like, it's wrong. And they shouldn't have had to come here into a space on our campus that makes them feel uncomfortable and do this. And I applaud them for the fact that they came here and really showed their resolve in this, because I wouldn't have, if it had been me, I would be mad, to be honest. So my resolution is for us, my motion is for us to vote on this right now and not be wasting time with questions that are harmful and hurtful.
All right, motion from Holly, second from Anthony. All right, and with that, any objections to moving towards a vote on this resolution? All right, seeing none, we will go ahead and move a vote into the chat. Thank you very much, presenters. You are able to leave. All right, y'all will see that pop into the chat here. Do you agree with Senate Resolution 2023-302? Yes, if you would like to approve this resolution. No, if you do not, and abstain to stay out of the discussion. And I will let this poll run for about 1 minute. Quick question, is Lena Mose here? Oh, do I see her? Ah, perfect. Could you come up to the front, please, real quick? We just never got Is there anyone else who has not voted on this legislation that has the ability to do so? All right, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and move to close this vote. And with a vote of 37 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 0 abstentions, this motion passes unanimously. Still very much on. All right, and with that, we will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is Resolution 2023-303. A resolution to, let me pull up my, a resolution in support of Iranian students and community members. And how many minutes will you need, Holly? Oh, yes. Go for it. Go for it. You could use this mic as well. If you want to. Could you pass that? The mic.
Can you have the resolution up because I need to read it?
And then how many minutes will you need, Holly? Is 5 good? All right. Perfect. Ready to go? Oh, or should I? I should get it up on the computer as well. Yes, Sam.
Might want to make it like a bit bigger because it's hard for me to see at the back.
Oh, that's what is that big enough or?
I mean, I didn't have my glasses on, that's why I can, yeah, it's big. I think that's it.
Okay, perfect.
I just have to hold it.
No, you can just press that.
Oh, okay, cool. Sorry. Wow, that was loud.
Oh, yeah.
Careful,
Sorry. They are a tad sensitive.
Yeah, sorry I'm sitting here, but I am a disabled student and the stress of today has made my disability worse. So you're gonna have to see me from here. I wrote this resolution in support of our Iranian community. They're dealing with a lot right now as our Indigenous community. We have a couple of the students in the back, but they asked me to read this, so I'm reading it for them. This resolution was written with them. I know we've had a lot of comments before on, is the community involved? Yes, they were. I met with them. They looked over all of the writing. They haven't really had the support that they should have had from KU, and I have brought it up to the provost in private meetings. And I am meeting with the director of International Support Services on Friday. But as with the Indigenous resolution, we as a student senate should be showing our support to those that are affected across the globe by different issues. And not just, issues that affect solely ourselves. So I'm just going to read through the resolution. I don't think it's very controversial, to be honest. Whereas on September 13th, 2022, Masha Amini, a 22-year-old woman, was detained and tortured by the morality police in Tehran for wearing improper attire. Whereas 3 days later, on September 16th, Masha Amini was declared officially dead due to injuries sustained during her detention by Iran's morality police. Whereas Iran's morality police was officially established in 2005 and is responsible for enforcing the strict dress and moral code punishing women, and women is defined in Iran as any female over the age of 9 with up to 74 lashes when not dressed to their standards. Whereas the Iranian government has rejected the responsibility for Amini's death while she was in their custody, despite there being clear evidence of head trauma, blood, and other injuries, which indicate that she was tortured by the morality police.
Whereas Masha Amini's family was denied the right to view her body and was prohibited from having a public funeral, all in an effort to hide the evidence of torture and to silence any talk about the matter. Whereas Masha Amini's murder has sparked worldwide protests led by women and Iranian citizens who are fighting for freedom, basic human rights, autonomy, life, dignity, most of which have been heavily restricted for women since the Islamic Revolution of 1979. Whereas mass protests have taken place in Iran since the late 1990s, protesting the brutality of the morality police and opposing other unpopular and oppressive measures taken by the Iranian government. Whereas all protests have been met with repression and violence from the government, with more than 154 protesters. This was as of October 6th, 2022, being killed in the present protest triggered by Masha Amini's murder. Whereas women were not always required to wear the hijab in Iran, Iranians are fighting for equal opportunity and a government that is representative of the diverse cultures and values that Iranians represent. Therefore, be it resolved that the Students' Assembly at the University of Kansas publicly stands in solidarity with the Iranian people in their fight for freedom and basic human rights. Therefore, be it further resolved that the Students' Assembly at the University of Kansas condemns the torture and murder of Masha Amini and condemns any laws that discriminate against women or suppress their freedom. Therefore, be it further resolved that the Students' Assembly at the University of Kansas condemns the Iranian government's use of force against peaceful protesters, and we demand an end to the arbitrary arrests and murders of all who speak up against the brutality of the morality police and the system in general. Therefore, be it further resolved that the Students' Assembly at the University of Kansas calls on the United States government to sanction the morality police and sanction all officials involved in the suppression of protesters, avoiding sanctioning industries that would directly harm the Iranian people instead of those in power. Therefore, be it further resolved that the Students' Assembly at the University of Kansas stands for freedom, for basic human rights, such as the right to autonomy and self-determination. We support the women and the people of Iran in their fight to attain liberty. And then on the last page, it just says who we're going to send it to, which I believe you all can see. And I would just like to, how long have I got?
You have another minute.
Okay, I would also just like to mention the mental and physical toll that living far away from your family has, and not being able to contact them, not knowing if they're alive or dead from one day to the another. And the fact that KU has barely given any resources to our Iranian students is disgusting. And part of this resolution is calling for KU to stand up and get those resources to the students that really need it. And like they should with Indigenous students as well, obviously. That's it, I'm done.
All right, thank you very much for that, Holly.
Yeah.
All right, we are currently out of time, so unless we have a motion to extend time. All right, I see a motion. Do I see a second? I'm guessing from you. All right, and does anyone object to an extension of time by 5 minutes? All right, seeing none, time is extended, and I see your question. Are there any other questions in the room? Oh, a comment? Okay, make it brief, please.
No, it is. Just Nahsa is spelled wrong.
Is it?
Yeah, you spelled it Masha. It's
Okay.
M-A-H-S-A.
That's weird because we went through it. Okay,
Fine.
then we should get that edited.
Here, hold on, I'm finding it currently. Which clause was it in?
Okay, I guess it's spelled wrong throughout.
This one here?
Just on the first page?
And the second.
Okay. That's a friendly, we can do that.
While that's done, I just want to thank you for bringing this up. You know, I think that this is again, and oh, what?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I think this is another issue similar to the Indigenous issue that we just heard about. You don't need to be Iranian. You don't need to be, Middle Eastern to care about this issue. It's neither Islamic nor moral to impose what a woman or anyone can wear or cannot wear. That should be their personal choice. I also do agree with you, Holly, because I think it's very unfortunate when the war in Ukraine was going on, we saw an overpouring of support from KU's administration. When things happen in Palestine, when things happen in Syria, when things happen in Iran, just like this, we're not seeing that same support. So I
request to motion to vote on this bill or this resolution and hope that it also unanimously passes because this is, again, an issue about human rights and this shouldn't happen to anyone.
All right, I see a motion. Do I see a second? I see a second from Abdullah. All right. Is there anyone who objects to moving towards a vote on this resolution? All right, seeing none, we will move to a vote. Thank you, Holly. And if you can just drop that in the chat, Nathaniel. And what was the correct spelling for Masha? So like that?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll just make sure to highlight that for now so that we can go back and edit for the rest of the document. All right, the poll has now gone up. Do you agree with Senate Resolution 23-303? If you do agree with this resolution, please vote yes. If you do not, please vote no. And if you abstain, please abstain. And I'll let that run for about 2 minutes. I'm also going to put this under for this resolution, but for our first one, Resolution 2023-302, I put a little reply under saying, please reply here if you would like to sponsor that resolution. And so please make sure to reply with your name down below there so that I can add you to the list of sponsors. And I will have a similar one under the result tab shortly for this resolution.
Yeah.
I mean, if you, oh. Is there, if I can just get some quiet in the chamber here, is there anyone who has not yet voted on this resolution that has the ability to do so? All right, seeing none, we will move to close the vote. And with a vote of 37 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 0 abstentions, this motion clearly passes. So with that, let's see. With that, we will now go ahead and move on to the next item on our agenda here, which is our guest speaker, Sarah Waters and JJ O'Toole Coran, who are presenting a draft proposal of the student housing and KU dining rates. And we'll go ahead and wait for folks who are leaving the room to do that before we go ahead and start the guest speaker. Right. All right. Everything looking good back there, Sadie? Solid? All right. Okay, if I can go ahead and get everyone's attention back here, call us back to order. All right, thank you. All right, so now we are going to go ahead and listen to our guest speakers, Sarah Waters and JJ Otokoran, to go over the proposal for student housing and KU dining rates this next year. You have 10 minutes whenever you're ready to start.
Thank you, Alessia. Thank you for the opportunity this evening to engage with Students Assembly. My name is Sarah Waters. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Director of Student Housing. I'm going to take the initial part of our time, and then our interim director of the unions will then come up and talk specifically about KU dining rates. Annually, the student housing at KU is required to propose next year's fiscal year 24. Right now is what we're proposing to the Kansas Board of Regents. This is due by, okay, yeah, sorry. Annually, this is due by late October to the Chancellor and CFO's office for first read in November with the Board of Regents and final in December. Housing and dining rates are done separately from student fee and tuition proposals if you're not familiar with the process. This year, the proposal that I've shared in draft proposal that does include housing and dining. I know Alessia had sent this out through your process. The overall housing increase for this coming year is an average 4.5% rate increase. Amongst overall housing rates, it's a 2 to 6% depending on the room type and building. Housing annually looks at our demand, looks at overall cost, and looks at overall capacity when we're factoring in our budget. We are an auxiliary, which means we are self-funded by room rates, income. We do have some conference program income that is now starting to come back post-COVID. And then we do have a couple of trusts that we benefit from, but specifically that really is the Miller and Watkins Scholarship Halls. Our current FY23 projections, so the current fiscal year we are in, are that the increase we proposed last year is going to allow us to meet all of our initial expense projections. We also need to return our cash carry forward to a 90-day cash carry forward. We had that pre-pandemic. It's what allowed us to continue to function, allowed us to issue almost $8 million in room credits to our on-campus residents. And then the university did assist us in backfilling that cash carry forward, but no longer will there be federal money that will allow for that. So as we're looking at inflation right now, which is over 8%, for utilities and different cost of living increases for our staff, we feel this year we're going to make projections, but even more importantly, be able to start investing in capital improvements and deferred maintenance needs in all of our communities. This coming year in FY24, we needed to ask for this average 4.5% increase, again, in order to meet all of our expense reductions, but to continue to invest in our facilities. This current fiscal year, we're planning on over $4 million in capital improvements and deferred maintenance needs. Next fiscal year, we already have over $3.5 million that we're looking at, and we believe with this increase, we'll be able to fund. JJ?
Hi, everyone. I'm JJ O'Toole Curran, and I'm our interim union director for the KU Memorial Unions, and I'd like to thank this body for letting us come and speak to you tonight. I also want to introduce Justin Lee, who is our senior associate director for KU Dining. And we're both here to answer questions that you may have with KU Dining plans. So similar to what Sarah was talking about, KU Dining is part of the package that goes to the Board of Regents. And we are asking for an overall average increase of 5% to the dining rates. We haven't, last year was the first increase we had received in quite a few years. Our dining plans had been flat or lower for several years prior to the FY22 fiscal year. So this is our second request for an increase in quite a few years that we've had. Similar to things that we're looking at, cost of food and inflation in the last year between 21 and 22 have gone up about 8%. So that's something that affects what we can do here on campus. Also supply chain, thinking about our staffing shortage that we've had this fall and the increases that we've needed to make on the staffing side of things. And then also the increase in utility rates have all affected the things that we've looked for and put into our package for what we're going to take to the Board of Regents. I think that's similar to what Sarah talked about. We need to think about moving forward deferred maintenance. Obviously, with running a dining operation, we always have equipment that needs that hits into life and things that we'll have to look at on that things. We also want to stay current with our staffing and what the rates that we need to offer, as our competition in the Lawrence community is very high. And then we watch very closely what the increase in food costs are. Justin, anything you'd add to that?
I think that sums it up well. We're looking at efficiencies outside of dining plan rates, as far as currently interviewing for a procurement supply manager to help us reduce the overall costs at KU Dining. However, there is equipment that in the last several years, we have not done any requests for capital expenditures to replace that equipment proactively. So right now we're looking at equipment basically as it fails and then replacing as a reactive solution.
I think we're open for questions.
And will that be it? All right, thank you very much. Can we get a round of applause for our guest speakers here? All right, and with that, do we have any questions? I see one from Zachariah. Did I see you first there? All right, here, I'm gonna get down a list here. Zachariah, Abdullah, Turner, and let's see, what was your name again? Alex, Turner, Alex, Austin, Chris, Camden. All right. Do we have mics back here, Camden? Do you have a mic back there, or? All right. Okay, so currently in the speaking order, I have Zachariah, Abdullah, Turner, Alex, Austin, Chris, and Camden. Is there anyone else who wants to be on the question order? Also, given the rate of questions, do I see any time extensions as of yet, or 10 minutes? All right. Extending off the time as it is currently, or just 10 minutes in total? All right, second. All right, second from Austin there. Do we have any objections to extending time to be 14 minutes? All right, seeing none, we will go ahead and start with questions. Zachariah, you're up first.
All right, thank you so much again for coming. My name is Zachariah. I'm the Fund Development Director here. The questions that I have aren't insofar as related to the cost increases. I'm aware of the challenges in regards to supply chain, rising costs across the board in terms of gas, food. But what I do want to ask in terms of addressing these increases in rates, as someone who lived in student housing last year, I was aware of the policy where if you lived on campus in one of the dorm halls, you had to purchase a meal plan. Are there conversations at all in regards to repealing that policy to make it more affordable for students in the long term? Because that was one thing that I remember all students debating about, is that they're required to pay for a meal plan if they live on housing, if they live on campus housing.
Yeah, thank you for the question. We're not discussing right now the dropping of the meal plan for residence hall and scholarship hall students. Apartment living, of course, is open and students can opt into that, partly because we do not have adequate kitchen facilities inside most of our facilities in order to allow for students to cook. And cooking in space also causes a lot of fire alarms. So we also have limitations based on fire marshal and fire code for being able to cook inside a residence space.
Can I ask a follow-up question or a quick one?
You can make it brief.
Yeah, so in regards, is there a possibility of making an opt-in option so that students can choose whether or not they want to enter?
We can certainly take that under consideration, but that does have a pretty significant impact to dining's overall budget based on how we look at the on-campus experience. So I don't know if JJ, there's anything you would add.
No, I think that would significantly impact our budget and what we could do for the campus, or the residents that live in those halls, is if we would have an opt-in policy.
All right, thank you, Zachariah. Next I have Abdullah.
I only have a point of information that I want to add, like after people finish their questions, if that's okay.
Sure. I'll put you on for a point of information here at the end. Next on the list, I have Turner.
Hey, I was just wondering what are the sort of, if you could give some examples on the deferred maintenance you guys have put off and are expecting for the next few years in dining and housing?
Sure, I'd be happy to give some examples. So for this fiscal year right now, we are working on roof replacement. We have, as well as chiller replacement and Hashinger, elevator replacement modernization in Lewis, Lewis roof. Looking through my list, Tower A needs a new roof. In the scholarship halls, there's dishwasher replacements, there's foundation repair, HVAC replacements. And so those are some of the big ticket items, as well as is currently in this fiscal, we are starting to plan for the Lewis renovation. That would be consistent with what the Templin renovation was that we just completed this to start this school year. We invested about $3.3 million in Templin. We did not raise the room rate. We kept it at the rate that the Lewis equivalent and Ellsworth is, because we're trying to hold costs down, but modernize space. And so those are just some of the examples. Another quick one from last year that we are still finalizing funding on, we did put a new roof on Corbin. That roof this past summer was a $960,000 roof to re-roof Corbin. And we are also continuing to pay for the final demolition costs of Oliver Hall.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Turner. And next I have on the list is Alex.
First off, thank you guys so much for coming. My question is, why is the scholarship hall meal plan increasing so much, especially in comparison to the ease all-you-can-eat dining plan?
Sure. So this question's around the scholarship hall meal plan. Housing controls the cost of that meal plan. We direct charge that to the scholarship hall students in the 10 of the scholarship halls. And then we work with them to buy food in order to prepare their own meals. It is a cost of living increase and it's an inflation increase. Inflation right now is about 8.5%. With this fiscal year, we are not going to make budget with the current meal plan charges that we have charged this current scholarship hall students, and we have moved out some costs that should be in the meal plan, including composting as well as all kitchen supplies. We're funding those separately out of room rental. So we're working to make up some of that differential to run the cooperative kitchens. That's why that increase is there. It's $1 per day per resident to add to their overall food budgets. The scholarship hall students have voted on this proposal already at an all scholarship hall council meeting, and they did support it.
Thank you.
All right, after that, I have Austin. Oh, and Angela, do you have a question in the back there? Okay, I'll go ahead and add you.
I have a point of information about the Scholar Hall meal plan.
Make it brief.
Yeah, I was on the executive board of my hall in KK Amini, and the money from that meal plan there was so much left out that we couldn't even spend because we paid so much money, and housing didn't even know how to spend that money on food. So we had a huge budget left at the end of the year, and it wasn't spent.
Do you want to comment on that, Sarah? Yeah.
That was last fiscal year, and last fiscal year, only 2 scholarship hall meal budgets actually ran at a positive. All of the rest of them did run at a deficit. And so while Abdullah does have a direct experience there, our overall accounting after everything was trued up does not show that it was that significant. And I don't know what a lot means there. So, but we have shared that detail with the all scholarship community.
All right, thank you for that point of information. Let's see, Austin, you are next on the list.
Hello, I'd like to thank you all for coming out and opening yourselves these questions for clarification regarding housing policies. a question I have relates to what was some of the decision factors that you all had with determining the percent change in the rate based on kind of amenities or I guess categories of housing? For instance, I noticed that Stufer and McCarthy, which tend to be on the higher end of housing costs, tend to have lower percent increases with regards to some of the other mainline Daisy Hill type rooms and room choices. I was wondering what's kind of the decision calculus behind that?
Yeah, so one of the things that we look at is overall demand for room types, as well as what ongoing deferred maintenance or capital improvement needs are in a facility. And so some of the newer facilities have a lower increase, partly because they're at some of the highest price points based on decisions when those were built in 2015 and 2017 and 18 when they opened. And so in looking at our individual cost centers, we look to balance individual buildings, and we did not believe that asking for a rate increase at the highest price points would allow us to continue to fill the buildings, nor did we need it to fund any ongoing capital improvement or deferred maintenance in those halls.
All right, thank you, Austin. Chris is next.
My question was also in regard to the scholarship hall meal plan rate increase. So thank you, Alex.
Perfect. All right, and then Camden.
Yeah, well, first off, thank you all so much for coming. This has been very informative. I do want it on the record that I lived in Templin the last year before the renovation, and I will just say that was a gritty year. I remember the day when it was roughly, I think, 7 degrees outside. The hot water heater broke. So I, of all people, am very sympathetic to the need for capital adjustment. My question is, have you done projections on the increase in revenue you expect to bring in across the board, and what share? You'd mentioned somewhere in the ballpark of $4 million in capital improvements. What share of the increase in revenue goes toward capital improvements in the projection, and which share of that is simply covering rising costs across the board?
Ooh, are you an accounting major? Math
No.
Business? Yeah. No, that's a very detailed question. I appreciate you asking that. I was looking, I don't have it printed. I'm gonna do this from memory. The increase on room rental will yield $1.4 million total additional revenue for this coming year. We are anticipating in room rental and as well as scholarship hall meal rental. I believe Scholar Halls is around 205,000 total additional just for those communities. Apartments is 300-ish thousand, and the balance is in the res halls in the middle. The capital improvement is not something I can quote off the top of my head. I've been working with Jeff DeWitt, the CFO for KU, on that, because we benefit from both this increase and our deferred maintenance funds. And then there is a trust called Pearson Trust that housing does benefit from as well. So looking at how we fund our capital improvement needs is actually a blend between those two, to use that trust plus use the revenue we've built up in this fund. Did I get at the?
No, that makes perfect sense. That's exactly what I was
Okay.
trying to clarify. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Camden. And finally, Angela.
All right, so I actually have
and
3
Danae.
questions. So Alessia, please do with that information. what you
Danae, are you fine with 2 follow-ups? Okay, perfect.
Okay. Thank you all so much for being here, first of all. So my first question is about the Grubhub partnership. I'm just curious, like, where did that come from? What is the intended impact of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So are you referring to as far as like on-campus kiosk mobile ordering, or more to the off-campus portion of it?
My understanding of it, with regard to like student meal plans, like students having Grubhub dollars and that aspect.
Absolutely. So having Grubhub dollars was first decided when we came back in fall of 20. The needing to have, fall of 21, we needed to have another avenue for students to use their meal plans as dining locations on campus. We just weren't keeping up with the demand. And so the ability to have off-campus restaurants provide some of those meals is where that originated from. The original dollar amount for each dining plan was $200 per semester to allocate for off-campus. And then we did increase that to $500 per semester, both last fiscal year and in this current fiscal year.
All right, thank you. And then a complaint that I hear a lot from students is that food quality in the dining halls has gone down significantly. What is this like under your purview, and like what is being done to address that?
It is under my purview, and it is something that we've heard across several of the dining halls. So as far as to address it, our culinary teams are working on redoing menus. One of the things that had happened in previous years was Ekdal Dining, for instance, went to more of a static 1 week rotation of menus, meaning that you go in for lunch and every Monday it's going to be the same thing offered. So that is changing and changing currently. So it's increasing to a 2 week rotation now. We plan to be at a 3 week rotation again by spring semester. Part of it also is then the supply chain challenges as far as items that we have sourced, either not being available to us. And so then sub ingredients that come in that we may not have tested prior. So what we're working through on that is creating over our top 100 list of items that we use across campus. We've created an initial approval of subs from our suppliers that is the only sub that we will allow. And then now our work is to look at a secondary list of subs in case both number 1 and number 2 are not available. What's number 3 that we have looked at prior and we have tested?
All right, and I'm just not going to ask my third question because it's irrelevant now. So thank you.
Okay.
Hi, so I'm an RA in South Hall, and so I can kind of speak towards their experiences. And so one thing that has kind of been a complaint or just a worry amongst a lot of RAs since the beginning of the school year, and I'm not sure if this is something that you guys make the decision on, so I'll let you answer that first, but how much dining dollars RAs get, is that a decision that you all make, or is that a completely different?
So the RA.
Sorry, before you answer that question, we have like 30 seconds left. And so do we have a time extension? 5 minutes from Chris, second from Abdullah. All right. And anyone who objects to a 5-minute time extension for our speakers?
I would say let's just make it 10 minutes because it's just gonna take longer, so.
10 minutes from Chris, second from Abdullah, I'm presuming since you amended it there. Any objection from the chamber for a time extension of 10 minutes? All right, seeing none, time is extended and you can go ahead and answer that.
The RA meal plan is negotiated between housing and the Memorial Union and isn't something that Justin can speak to. And that's something that we're looking at for this coming year. And so if you have concerns about that, let's connect about them. From your employment standpoint, we're going to be working with the complex directors to get that kind of feedback. And so we definitely want to make sure that you're compensated appropriately. Okay.
All right, thank you, Danae. And I had a question from Sam. Are there any other questions in the room? Oh, from Abdullah. All right, so Sam and then Abdullah, and yeah, should be good there.
Hello. Yeah, thank you for coming out tonight. Appreciate it. So currently, like the state of Kansas has a $1.2 billion budget surplus. I was curious, like whether or not KU Housing and Dining has made any overtures at all to the legislature to increase funding, increase support for housing and dining and whatnot to help offset cost increases.
Housing and dining are auxiliaries, and so we do not take state funds. So Jeff DeWitt could better clarify how. We don't, but that is not permitted, is my understanding.
Okay.
Anything else or?
Any overage from the legislature should go to your tuition and fee support, in my personal opinion. And I believe that that's what Jeff DeWitt would share.
Right. Holly, do I see a motion? Well, not to approve, a vote of support. Yes.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say there's a question on the floor currently. All right, and we won't need to make a motion. We can just close out the presentation at that end. All right, and Abdullah, would you like to start with your question?
Will any of the money that is being collected as a result of those increases be used to pay off debt on constructed buildings? Because I know that KU Housing is in debt for several of those buildings.
There is a large amount of our budget. It's nearly 40% that goes to debt service. So the answer to your question is yes. We have to meet our expense obligations, and it includes debt service, which is like a mortgage to your house. And so our overall expenses include utilities, staffing, like anything that we need in order to run our facilities, and includes debt.
So was that 40% you said?
It is between 38 and 41%, depending on how much revenue we bring in annually that is immediately out the door to pay for debt service or the central district lease agreement payment.
Can I have a question first? Holly, can I ask a question first before your motion?
Oh, well, we still have
Yeah.
7 minutes on the floor, so feel
Well,
free.
she was gonna motion. I had a question about your debt. Are those interest rates fixed, or has that also been affected by a general rate rise across the board?
So in KU bonds projects, so like we did for South Oswald, most recently, it is all fixed. They're bonds that are sold. We do refinance typically at the university, somewhere around the 10-year mark. And so we've refinanced in the past couple years some of the older bonds. But our debt service on the bonds does not some of it, like Lewis rolls off this year, but then Ellsworth's payment's going to balloon. So we don't have any significant decrease in overall debt service until 2031. Even though some of the bonds are rolling off. The central district lease agreement is slightly different. There are some CPI indicators in there as part of that public-private partnership. The lease agreement is generally stable. But the asset management fees, the management agreement, and some other things do fluctuate annually.
Got it. Buildings are expensive.
Buildings are expensive to run. Yes, they are.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions remaining in the room? All right. Oh, Sam?
I guess just as a clarification on like your auxiliary status and whatnot, like are there pros and cons? I guess are there more pros to KU housing and dining being auxiliary in terms of like the ability you have to offer services to the student body that would keep you from also asking for state funding? Or like, I mean, I just kind of want to hear your personal opinion on that, or just in general, like what the thinking is behind that and why that is the way it is.
Well, I can speak to housing. JJ, I'll have to speak to the Memorial Union. It's very common at state institutions that a housing operation is an auxiliary. And that's, I believe, and that public institutions are almost always an auxiliary. And so I think in the long run, from a development perspective and the ability to be nimble and immediately respond to student needs and long-term forecast plans, it makes sense that we're an auxiliary, but I certainly understand what you're talking about. If we had all of our deferred maintenance and capital improvement plans done right, we would not be asking for a rate increase to this level. And so it allows us to be a little bit more nimble, I believe, annually. When we can stabilize our bed capacity, if that makes sense.
All right. Thank you,
JJ, I
Sam.
don't know if there's.
It's similar. I mean, most unions are auxiliaries. I know we're a little bit more unique at KU because we're a 501c3 affiliate of University of Kansas. In the state of Kansas, K-State is the only other union operation that's set up like that, where they're a 501c3 as well. But it does help us to be, like what Sarah talked about, more nimble. And we can move on contracts and things like that faster. So, but yeah, I mean, across the country, almost every union is going to be an auxiliary of some sort, whether all the different pieces that we have in our union is in a similar setup.
All right, Alex.
I know that there is or was a proposal from the Board of Regents that all freshmen at KU and K-State were going to have to start living on campus. What is your plan to offer more affordable housing if you can't get state funding for those students? Because I just don't really think that everybody's going to be able to pay these rates that you're proposing if everyone's forced to live on campus.
So K-State does now have a residency requirement. It went in effect this year. So KU is the last Regents institution that does not have an on-campus residency requirement, just for clarification. There are always exemptions if you do institute a policy such as that, and one of them can be for financial reasons to not be required to live on. At the University of Kansas right now, we are not planning to move forward with on-campus residency, at least for the next 2 fiscal year cycles, is my understanding.
All right, thank you, Alex. And I don't believe there are any other questions. Abdullah, you said you had a point of information at the end.
Okay. I would like to thank the speakers for coming here today for presenting this plan. This is something that didn't happen last year, at least, from my experience. This is a great step that you're coming here, that you're showing us, your financial plan, what you plan to do with that money. But I do think that this is not a matter for Student Senate to vote on, since that there are student organizations that live in those spaces and that are, more deserving of voting on this topic. I think it's great that we heard this, and I think that there were a lot of great questions, but I don't think that we should vote on this. I think, and from what I heard in rights, when the speakers came to rights.
I'm sorry, but is this a point of information or like a speech?
Yeah.
In relation?
Yeah, and there is a point of information here. When the speakers came to rights, my understanding was that the speakers were not seeking a vote. So I don't think we should vote on this tonight.
That was already decided in Studex, though, to my understanding. That would require a motion to
Yes.
amend the agenda, so.
We were never going to vote on it.
We're voting on whether or not you support the rates increase given the reasoning that's been provided. All right, anything else?
I have a motion to do the little vote thing.
All right, perfect. All right, well, thank you very much for coming to speak with us. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, and do I see a second to Camden's motion? All right, I see a second from Evan, perfect. All right, and with that, any objection to moving towards this vote? All right, seeing no objections, we will go ahead and put that in the chat. And if I could just sort of describe what this is going to be and just make sure it's like very clear before we vote. Do you support the presentation by KU Housing Dining? This means, yes, I do support that these rates do have to increase based upon the reasoning given by the speakers. No, if you don't believe the rates need to increase based on the reasoning provided by the speakers, or if you thought the reasoning wasn't enough, and then abstain if you would like to stay out of the discussion. Does anyone else have any further questions of clarification? This isn't regular legislation that we vote upon, but it is a recommendation that we are providing as the Student Senate. Holly? We can just also send those names along in support. I think for like voting purposes in the assembly, we should probably just keep it to voting members, of course. Yes? The effect of voting no? It would just be that you're like showcasing like a no. Oh, at this assembly meeting? If the assembly voted no, then basically that would just be there for KBOR to review when they are reviewing the housing rates. So KBOR is going to have the ultimate authority of like setting these rates at the end, but they look at like data provided by like student feedback to like see that. And so if they did see negative student feedback, I'm sure that would be something that they take into consideration when re-reviewing these rates. Of course.
I think Sadie has something to say.
Yeah.
On that too, I'm the rep for KU to KBOR for like the Students Advisory Committee. It's basically like the student branch of KBOR, and I chair it this year, like KU does. So me by extension. And so if this like specific Board of Regents that we have right now is more like attentive to what the student voice is. And so that's why in Studex, myself and other members of the executive board and other members there as well push to have this vote. So we can just have documented at least some student voice as to if they support this or don't. Even though it's not everyone, it's at least something, because I think the Board of Regents will be receptive to whatever we have to say. And it's better to just try anyway than not.
Thank you for that, Sadie. And Holly, for your question earlier, I've also added a please reply here if you'd like to sponsor this proposal under like the vote there. Or wait. Yeah, I put it on the wrong one. I should put it on this other one.
Alessia, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
I don't mean if you support it, I meant if you like, there are some of us that might not support it, but would want our voices also heard.
I mean, you could also just put yes, no in
Okay.
like the sponsor portion. So let me correct that then.
Yeah, you could just change, so exec can vote whether they support it or not, because I think K-Board would be probably interested in that too.
All right, Holly, it's down there. If you are a non-voting member, please put your opinion on the proposal here. Of course. All right, and is there anyone who has not voted on this matter that wishes to do so? All right, seeing none, I will go ahead and move to close this vote. All right. And with a vote of 16 in the affirmative, 9 in the negative, and 10 abstentions, the Students' Assembly will send a motion of support for this rates proposal. All right. And with that, we will go ahead and move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the officer reports. And with that, Sadie, you are our first officer report here. Is Sadie here?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Ah, perfect.
I'm just gonna make a motion to email out the officer reports after Senate tonight.
Do we have a second? All right, I see many. All right. And any opposition to removing the officer reports tonight? To be fair, I did not think there would be. All right, so the officer reports are now officially stricken from tonight's agenda and will be emailed out after the meeting. All right, look at us shortening this meeting by 30 minutes there. All right, and now we will be moving on to the next item on our agenda, which is the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion from Chris. Do I see a second? All right, I see a second back here. What was your name again? Anna? Ah, perfect. One from Anna Sophia. Perfect. All right, and with that, any objection to approving the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, we will now put a vote for the consent agenda in the chat. All right. That vote has now been posted into the chat. If you approve the consent agenda, please vote yes. If you do not approve of it or have an objection to an item, please vote no. And if you are abstaining, abstain gracefully. We'll have about a minute and a half there for the vote to run.
I was just gonna do it for like the forward bill 2023 dash whatever.
Yeah, I'm saying like I should give people like a chance to see the legislation before they All right, is there anyone who has not voted on this legislation that has the ability to do so? Yes? All right, vote yes on the consent agenda. Perfect. Nathaniel, can you add yes for Bander on the consent agenda to the minutes? All right, anyone else? Oh, I just saw one roll in. I'm gonna give 15 more seconds for this vote to go before we're gonna go seek to close it. All right, anyone else who needs to vote? Seeing none, we will move to close this vote. All right, and with a vote of 32 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 0 abstentions, this motion passes unanimously. All right, and with that, we will go ahead and move on to the next item on our agenda, which is Senate Bill 2023-20, a bill to fund the 2023 Engineering Expo. Do we have the authors of that legislation, or Turner? You can go ahead and find it at the end there. And how many minutes do you need?
2 minutes.
All right.
I don't know how to do this.
Why
is there 2 maps?
Just go over. It's one of these bills here.
Which ones? This one?
No, it's 20. So probably the last one. Oh, there it is.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready. And if we could quiet down the chamber here, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so the Engineering Student Council couldn't make it tonight, but they came to us to fund part of their Engineering Expo. The Engineering Expo is an event that engineering puts on each year. It brings in a lot of students from the state of Kansas and kind of does cool little experiments and like just shows them a little bit about engineering at KU. It's like a kind of a recruitment event, kind of like good press for KU. It's been going on since 1911, and we've funded them for a very long time. So they're coming in and requesting $1,700 for food and drinks, and then $300 for parking and transport. And they have funding that alleviates the 1,500 rule from the engineering department. So no problem there. But yeah, that's it.
All right, thank you, Turner. Any questions here? I see a motion from Holly. Yes, I was going to explain that if there are no further questions. All right, so yes, we do have food funding restrictions in Student Senate. And within our constitution, it's like basically a $500 limit for food and drink funding in Student Senate to any events that we sponsor. However, with a 2/3 vote to suspend the rules, we can go ahead and break that restriction and fund this event anyway. And I see a motion back there from Chris and then a second from Camden. All right, and anyone who objects to moving to suspend the rules or moving to a vote to suspend the rules? All right. You know what, sure. All right,
Can we suspend it for the rest of the night?
No objection. I want to go ahead and like make it like between each bill so that people can consider each bill in the different context
Okay.
there. So yeah, are there any objections to suspending the rules and now just going by unanimous consent? All right, seeing none, the rules suspended. Do I see a motion to vote upon this legislation? I see a motion from Holly. I see a second from Austin. All right, are there any objections to moving towards a vote on this legislation? All right, seeing none, that vote will be posted. Thank you very much, Turner. Huh? Yes. Yeah, feel free to stay up there. Okay, the vote has now been put up in the Students' Assembly teams here. Do you agree with Senate Bill 23-20? Yes, if you support the passage of this legislation under the new suspension. No, if you do not, and abstain to stay out of the discussion. And I'll let this run for about a minute. All right. Is there anyone who has, oh, if I can get some quiet in the chamber, thank you. Is there anyone who has not yet voted on this legislation that wishes to do so? Doing once, twice, no. All right. Well, with that, we have a vote of 31 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 0 abstentions. So this legislation clearly passes. All right, and next on our agenda here, we have Senate Bill 23-19, a bill to fund University of Kansas Women in Medicine, also presented by Turner. Turner, you will have 2 minutes.
Cool. Yeah, so similar to my last speech, we are funding the University of Kansas Women in Medicine. They're having like just an event at McLean's. They're gonna have like a $300 tab for members in the club to get drinks. There's gonna have some food and other stuff upstairs. And it's gonna be a good event for, it's kind of a recruitment and also just event that they're having. And we also need to suspend the budget code for this one.
All right, motion from Holly or a question? All right, are you done with your presentation there?
Yeah.
All right, Holly?
Student group knows that they can't like pay for alcoholic beverages with the money, right?
Yes.
Okay, that was just my
It's
question.
it's at 9:30 in the morning.
Oh, you got drinks, and I'm like, McLean serves alcohol.
chai.
Like, I'm just double checking.
Like I'm talking chai tea.
Chai tea.
Sorry, everybody, for the stupid question, apparently.
Senate appropriate drinks, Chris? All right, move to
Thanks,
suspend, second from Abdullah. All right, and do we have any objections to suspending the rules in regards to food for this event here? All right. Seeing none, the rules are suspended. All right, and do we have a motion to vote? Motion from Chris, do I have a second? Second from Vander. All right, anyone who objects to moving to a vote on this legislation? All right, seeing none, we will go ahead and get a vote, Rob. And Nathaniel, this is for Bill 23-19. All right, that vote has now been shared in the Students' Assembly channel. Vote yes if you support this legislation, no if you do not, and abstain to stay out. And I'll let that run for a few minutes here. We also have an announcement from our Internal Affairs Director over here to, yeah, if you want to go ahead and get that during the vote so we can save some time.
Oh, okay, there we go. Oh, there we go. So can Jeffrey Brown, Anya Ajad, Anya Vasu, Alicia Ramos, and Riley Moreland come to the front, please?
Just at the end of the meeting.
Oh, yeah, sorry, after the meeting ends.
All right. Are all the votes good? Hmm? Okay.
I also have an announcement. TCU had Kesha perform yesterday, so be jealous of our fellow Big 12 school. It cost around 170,000.
Tuition, $52,000.
We What's up? Yeah.
Sorry, Turner.
Oh.
I had to do some research on who and what was appropriate for team to spend on, and so I had to try and do. So for something like that, their overall student funding, but I think they're higher to support that. Should be. And so when you see like that talent, kind of like that happens there, good watch students. So it's not something you can snap your fingers and spend money on, like a year's worth of work.
That's good to know. Thanks for pointing that out.
Okay. And Nathaniel, you had another announcement there?
Oh, yeah, sorry, just wanted to make a correction. Sorry, Riley Moreland, you don't have to come to the front, sorry.
She was ready to fight you.
Brilliant. All right. Is there anyone else who needs to vote on this legislation that has not already? All right, then I'll move to close this vote. And with a vote of 28 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 0 abstentions, this motion clearly passes. Any other announcements, or do I see a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn from Holly? Another announcement, one more announcement, okay.
We have another bill.
Huh?
I think we have another bill.
We have another piece of legislation?
Oh, I might be wrong.
We do not.
All right, sorry.
Yeah, huh? All right, second from Abdullah. Any objection to adjournment?
I just want to say Turner is so
Take the
courageous.
seats as none.
Oh, okay.
We are adjourned.
Yeah. Hey, shut up, Zachary.